thank you so much for staying for the second panel. This is a panel that raises a very important question. Where do we go from here? So we're going to start with Juan Padro and his comments. He's a local business owner with strong ties to the nonprofit community here in Colorado. He has helped raise awareness about the challenges facing residents of Puerto Rico as they rebuild their communities. In Denver, he raised over $100,000 to support relief and rebuilding efforts on the island. He holds a BA in history from the University of Massachusetts and is the owner of several award-winning restaurants in Colorado. And then following will be Professor Annette Martinez Orabona. She's professor of law at the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, where she is the director of the Human Rights Legal Clinic. As a practicing lawyer, she has experience in civil and constitutional rights cases, international human rights research, and litigation at the Inter-American System of Human Rights. She is also the executive director of the Caribbean Institute for Human Rights, and she was part of the Puerto Rican delegation of the Organization of American States that brought hemispheric attention to the current status of human rights in Puerto Rico. Professor Martinez Orabona holds a master's in international public law and human security from Tufts University's Fletcher School of International Affairs. And then Jimmy Torres-Velez will join the conversation. Mr. Torres has a labor relations degree from the University of Puerto Rico and a master's from UMass in Amherst. He has developed important relationships with the Puerto Rican community in the East Coast, and when Maria devastated the island, GASA, the group he helped organize, was able to mobilize the Puerto Rican community in Central Florida to send hundreds of thousands of dollars in goods and merchandise to Puerto Rico. Currently, he is president of the Puerto Rican Action Initiative, a community group that seeks to improve the life and opportunities of the Puerto Rican and Latino communities in Florida through direct action, advocacy, and leadership development. So welcome the panel. Thank you so much for joining us. You will have 7 minutes each. We're going to maintain the same format. I will signal you when you have 2 minutes left. You can wrap up your comments, and then we'll open up the conversation.
My name is Juan, so a lot of questions. My mother's Irish. My father was born in Jauco. My family lives in Puerto Rico. I have a lot of family around the city, in Rio Piedras, and Atole, and Guaynabo, and those areas. And my father grew up in the hills in Rancheras, where the other half of my family lives, Maricao, Las Marias, and Utuado, those areas as well. So maybe my perspective is a little bit in the middle. I'm not an academic, so I'm just a guy that owns a burger joint, and Latin restaurant, Italian restaurant, and so I grew up in Massachusetts, and I understand the importance of community, and I'm really proud of Puerto Rico. So I'm not a decorated public speaker, so please be patient with me. I was asked to tell my story. So when Maria hit Puerto Rico, obviously we have about, when I moved here in 2010, we had about 13,000 Puerto Ricans in Denver. I believe today we're over 30,000 in the city. And it's a pretty great group of people that live here, and we all kind of mobilized. I donated one of my restaurant spaces, and we did a fundraiser on a Tuesday. Everybody got together. We made pernil and arroz con habichuelas, and we had a baker from Colorado Springs come up and make bread, and it was just kind of a cool thing. We have a bunch of musicians in town that are Puerto Rican, and one, Rafael Rodriguez, who's in a band called Soja. The young people might know them. They're a pretty famous reggae band. Just got nominated for his second Grammy in 3 years, and he lives in Denver. And we all got together and we cooked, and we charged $25 a plate to the community, and we raised $109,000 on a Tuesday. So got really, really good. We got a really good response. Thank you. So a friend of mine saw on social media that what we were doing, our event was called Giving Light to Puerto Rico. We wanted to bring solar light to the hills more than anything. And So that I got connected with a woman named Allison Thompson in Miami. She's a world-renowned humanitarian. Spent the last 21 years in Syria, Niger, and Haiti. And she's actually the environmental ambassador for Haiti to the UN now. She's a pretty amazing lady. And there was a group of 3 nonprofits that sat under one roof, which is pretty rare, because nonprofits kind of fight one another for credit these days. It's really an unbelievable thing. But it's, excuse me. It was Global Empowerment Mission, a guy named Michael Capone. He was sort of a legend in the real estate development and club scene in Miami. He's part owner of the El San Juan. You guys are familiar with that place. Bobby Rodrigo, who's a lawyer in Miami, who's Puerto Rican. And a couple other folks, Omar Rosario, who's a Puerto Rican national, and Violet Camacho, who very silently is one of the most influential people in Hollywood. So I ended up with these folks in a 100,000 square foot warehouse, ironically, I was the only person who knew how to navigate the mountains in Puerto Rico. They all grew up around the city, and a lot of folks in the city don't really go up into those hills. And after Maria, I mean, everything was devastated. So, like a lot of other people said, it was hard to get in and out of the island at the beginning. So I dipped into my bank account, and I got a private jet, and I flew down there. So we were first responders down there. We had a New York Times reporter with us, and on the second day, he got really sick, so I picked up the blogging. So one thing I learned how to do in college was write well, and it got the attention of a woman named Bethany Frankel, who, if you watch the New York Housewives or whatever, maybe not much in this room, I don't watch it, I didn't know who she was, but apparently a very influential person, called my cell phone and said, "Hey, I see that you're able to get goods into Puerto Rico. All of our stuff is getting confiscated. Can you help?" And I said, "Sure." So she got on a plane, flew down to Aguadilla airport the next day, and brought Michael Jackson's daughter, Paris Jackson, with her. And we went to a couple schools in the area, and we started to get some social media activity in the States, and people with a greater sphere of influence than myself to help donate goods. So our 100,000 square foot warehouse became 1.5 million square feet in warehouse space over a 10-day period. While we were down in Puerto Rico, we flew back to just incredible amount of celebrities, from Benicio del Toro to John Leguizamo, who did videos for us, to Daddy Yankee, who has a foundation in Puerto Rico, who's been doing great things down there, to even Elon Musk getting involved. And so this $109,000 that we raised in Denver, Colorado, plus $60,000 that I put into my own money, helped raise $425,000 for our group. And we ended up getting a bunch of donations because of all the awareness that we were able to create. And it was 17.2 million pounds of aid. Became the largest private humanitarian mission in U.S. history. Sorry. I'm proud of that. I don't have a ton of time left, but if you want to learn how to help in Puerto Rico, I'm here to help you do that. If you want to learn how to build real estate in Puerto Rico, I'm here to help you. I know how to do that. I get, when you're a professor and you study this stuff, the data that you get is unbelievable, but practical application of that, I think maybe I can help a little bit. So if you want to talk afterwards, I'm happy to help. So, okay, that's it.
So first of all, let me just thank you, Aaron, and all of the organizers, and Luis, that contacted me back in Puerto Rico to come here. I feel that these opportunities are increasingly important for us to have these conversations and the discussions, and to have also the opportunity to discuss within Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans in the U.S. because we all have our own notions of what's best for our country, and it's a well-needed conversation to have. Okay, so let me just tell you about me. I am a Puerto Rican born and raised, and I live in Santurce, Puerto Rico, which is like a pocket in San Juan, in the San Juan area, with most of our population in Santurce are not necessarily on the upper scale of the economy. We are, most of us, middle-income professionals or low-income professionals. There's Santurce, and then there are some areas in Santurce where the community is a very low-income population. So that's me. I have two children. One is 3 years old and the other is 5. And what we have lived in the last couple of months in Puerto Rico has been really life-changing. We have lost friends. My daughter lost some of her dearest best friends at preschool. My son has developed some type of anxious nervousness whenever he hears hard rain, pouring rain. And we all have this tendency to just panic whenever the power goes down again, and it happens very often. So I have many things I wanted to say, but many of the things that I have on paper have been already discussed. But I just wanted to accentuate some issues that I think are important. First, of course, it has been discussed that our crisis began many, many years before Hurricanes Irma and Maria. But many people don't know what that means to Puerto Ricans themselves on their daily lives. Before the hurricanes came, this was in 2014 or 2015, our poverty rates were already skyrocketing. Almost half of our population lives under the poverty line. And economists already know that after hurricanes Irma and Maria, because there were 2 hurricanes in the course of less than 2 weeks, we had 2 Category 5 hurricanes in Puerto Rico. So after that, the situation is so that the poverty rates are estimated now on 60%. And that's the majority of Puerto Ricans. But before the hurricanes, we already were the second, we had the second highest rates of inequality in Latin America. And I think it's important to say that because this is not comparing Puerto Rico towards the US, because there's really no comparison. Our poverty rates are just too high. And, but comparing us with the rest of Latin America, being a US territory, is just terrible to say that our inequality rate is so high. And it is expanding more and more with every month that goes by. So our unemployment rate is also one of the largest in the world. We are among the first 10 countries in the world with the highest unemployment rate. And this was before Hurricane Irma and Maria again. And one of the most worrisome rates that we have is that those that are at the lowest in our economy and taking the hardest burden of it are children. So our children in Puerto Rico are the most affected population living under the extreme poverty line. And then we go and see what the government of Puerto Rico and the federal government are doing about this. And what we see is that the whole discussion is not on the impact that all of these policies have had on the daily lives and the economic and social rights of our population, but on how to deal with the debt. A debt that nobody actually is questioning. And that's one of the first issues that we have in Puerto Rico. I mean, civil society has been demanding answers for how this debt came to be so high, our government and the federal government allowed this to happen. But neither the Junta de Control Fiscal, the Control Fiscal Board, or the government want actually any kind of transparency over how those loan and bonds came to be. And at the bottom line, there is a responsibility from the federal government. The United States is definitely a fiduciary responsible for this debt, and not only for the public debt that we have, but also there is a large debt that the U.S. owes to Puerto Rico for the using of our land, for the explosion of our resources, to give one example, for the use of the territory of the island of Vieques for more than 60 years. And now what we have is people living with the effects of all of this, the added, right, sum of all of these policies. We have a fiscal control board which has no representative powers from a population. It is composed of, we have talked about the fiscal control board, but I would like just to give some description of what it is. It's a 7-member board approved by Congress and the President, and they actually have, by law, the control of all of our finances. Also, we are not able by law to sue any of those members or the fiscal control board as a whole, because the law also forbids us from doing that. Right now, although there are populations in Puerto Rico, for example, children, children with special needs. There is a class action suit in Puerto Rico. This is just to give one example. There's a class action suit in Puerto Rico demanding for children in the education public system to receive the special education that they need. Right now, that class action suit is stalled because with the PROMESA, the approval of PROMESA, and the Fiscal Control Board, we cannot, nobody, the parents of these children, cannot sue the government if the government fails to give them the services that their children have a right to. So we have, this is about 200,000 children in the system that have been denied systematically their right to education, but because there is no way for us to sue the government, there is a real violation of the right to reparations. There's no way you can sue the government right now. So we are hand-tied on every corner. And if for civil organizations in Puerto Rico, it's really a struggle to actually do something to demand action from the state. The last thing the government did was to change our criminal laws to make it even more difficult for us to even protest in the streets. So it's a concerted effort between the federal government and the state government in Puerto Rico to leave us with less rights and to leave us with no options on what to do. And I'll leave it there, but there's a lot more that we can discuss.
Diga, mi nombre es Jimmy Torres. My name is Jimmy Torres-Velez. I have a mother. And I'm the son of a factory worker. My mother went, her school was 6th grade, and my father went to high school. He was from Bayamon, but he was, he learned English through shining at Fort Buchanan, U.S. personnel. So I think I'm one of the few ones in my family that start to come to the university. And so I always like to mention that I know really regular people and I'm so fortunate to become a university student and then a graduate student. So I'm very pleased to being able to talk to the two words. It is two words. really, brothers and sisters, friends. And then my life in the labor movement, I've been in 13 states and 40 cities. You know, I know the Puerto Rican diaspora very well. So when I went back to Juan Gonzalez, we have like 20 mutual friends in different areas because we have been moving around. But the experience, what you saw, what happened to Juan a couple minutes ago, that was the bread and butter of the Orlando community for 40 days. We were crying every day in top of merchandises. And when we learn stories of people that have a good life, that they're going down in their pockets and putting down money, this gentleman just said that he put $60,000 of his own money to raise money for Puerto Rico, and we really appreciate that, brother. Just like that, a group of radio stations in Orlando put together $100,000. You know, Hector Marcano, they did like, we call it Radio Marathon in Puerto Rico, so people call and donate. So in one day, they raised $130,000. We got we obligated the Orange County Commission and the government to let us use a warehouse in Orange County, which have the second largest population of Puerto Ricans in the entire United States after the city of New York. And they gave us the 52,000 square feet warehouse, and we sent to Puerto Rico 2.5 million of pounds of merchandise. And we make magic with this $130,000. We still have money. Why? Because people like Juan and others decided to pay for the containers to be sent to Puerto Rico. So we got a lot of merchandise from regular people in Orlando, Kissimmee, all that area. We received merchandise from Alaska. You know, the wives of the military personnel in Alaska sent us like materials to Orlando, because a lot of people started to collect, but they didn't thought about how we're gonna get it to Puerto Rico. So we were that one in the East Coast with Miami and some other people in New York that were able to create a system to send materials to Puerto Rico. So that's that. I need to go to the next part, which is how we're gonna review Puerto Rico. The reason that Puerto Rico is in the situation that it is, and the reason that FEMA was treating people so bad, and the reason that we have so bad laws applying to Puerto Rico is one word and one word only: racism. They're racist in Congress that decide that laws cannot apply to Puerto Rico as they apply to the United States. Give you one example. In 1965, when they passed the Medicare law, it was equal for Puerto Rico. And then 2 years later, somebody, I think it was Strong Terman, decided it was too much money to send to Puerto Rico. So as a result of putting a cap into the amount of money that Puerto Rico could get from Medicare, so Puerto Rico have lost in 40 years, 50 years, have lost like $1 trillion. So this is the kind of situation that happened to Puerto Rico. So Juan mentioned the bankruptcy law. So one night, 1984-85, they took us out of the possibility of going in bankruptcy. Nobody knows. This is so amazing. So you try to look into what the reason. So one of these omnibus, legislation, boom, they put it in there. So Puerto Rico don't have the ability to go in bankruptcy. So the reality is that, and when you look into, I think Politico did a piece the other day about comparison the reaction or the response from the federal government to Katrina, to Harvey, or to different states, and the slow process of getting the help to Puerto Rico is outrageous. So what we're doing now is that the other day, the people here from Macau, so the other day I was in Congress, we're lobbying Congress, and we're telling Congress the kind of things that are happening with the federal agencies that are supervised by Congress. So we went to a congressman from Jacksonville, and we started a conversation saying, Mr. Congressman, do you know that you have 20,000 Puerto Ricans in your district? And he was like, no, I didn't know that. So You are in the committee that supervises FEMA. FEMA is doing a bad job in Puerto Rico. So can you hold hearings on Puerto Rico? This is the kind of thing that we can help the people in Puerto Rico. We have to continue helping people in Puerto Rico do what they have to do. But we need to push very hard. I think, a joke among Puerto Ricans here. So the dream of Carlos Romero Barceló to have 5 congresspersons, if they became state one day, you can multiply that in Pennsylvania or in Puerto Rico or in Florida, when we have at least 15 Congress people that are receiving thousands and thousands of votes from Puerto Ricans. Okay? So Val Demis have 80,000 Puerto Ricans in her district. That's a congressman from Florida. And you go on and on and on and on, and you can investigate and see that we really can change the conversation about Puerto Rico. So we are leading a movement that is called Boricua Voto. So this is what we do. So we need to get the Puerto Ricans to vote, and we are calling to have like a call, not as Hispanic but as Boricuas, because when you do that call as Boricuas, which is another way of calling Puerto Ricans, as Boricuas, we put our people in position to negotiate in a better way with politicians, with Congress, and with that man that people call their president.
Thank you so much to our panelists for addressing the trauma and the human cost of this latest tragedy, and also for bringing up some uncomfortable topics. So now we invite you to ask questions.
I really want to thank all of you for the work that you've all done, and the initiatives and ideas you've given to all of us in the audience about what we can do to help Puerto Rico or better be in solidarity. But it seems like one thing is missing to me, and the reason it comes to mind is I've spent many years working with the decolonization movement in Palestine, and their most successful tactic in creating their own autonomy has been the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And I think it makes so much sense when you're talking about how to move forward in a place that's been preyed on by these vulture funds, and where land is being snapped up by developers who want to turn the island into, what was the term we heard earlier, a retirement home or something like that, or a giant resort. Where the people who are talking about not just raising money for Puerto Rico or sending aid, but also taking away the economic power from the people who are benefiting from the most from disaster.
Can you give that mic back to her real quick? All right. Can you get real specific on your question, because there's a bunch of little things in there that I want to address, but we only have a little bit of time, so.
What I'm curious to know is if anyone is thinking about how to move forward in Puerto Rico, if there is a movement to say, okay, there are investment funds that are profiting enormously off of Puerto Rican debt, and there's going to be a mass movement to divest from those funds. Or if there are real estate developers or luxury hotel chains or something like that who are taking advantage of economic catastrophe to snap up land at really cheap prices, if there's a movement to boycott those chains and to take away economic power from disaster capitalists.
Yeah, that stuff definitely exists. You guys might be able to comment on it a little bit more than me, but tourism is a big economic driver in Puerto Rico, so a lot of those big resorts and things like that that's pretty much what's creating jobs down there, at this point. So I think you alluded to the fact that people are getting sort of squashed down a little bit in their ability to go out and protest and things like that. So I think those are all contributing factors to that not being a really loud movement. But there are a lot of people, small movements in Puerto Rico that I personally have seen and that are doing things to kind of recapture, a lot the island. In particular in the mountains. That land is pretty incredible. I don't know how many any of you have spent much time up there, but I own 148 acres of land up there, and my uncle next to me has 450 acres of land. And I can tell you that big corporations are trying to buy it, Coke, Nestle, all these, all these big nationals. And they got to get back to, the movement really needs to be in sustainability, so agriculture and solar and wind power need to be the things that they need to focus on. So, do you want to?
I don't know if this is the right answer to your question, because I don't know of any concerted effort to do that, right? But what we have been doing, now that you brought Palestine as an issue, right, and how to raise awareness of what's happening in Puerto Rico more internationally, what we have done is to gather as the majority of civil and community organizations in Puerto Rico and try to gather the most data possible that we have on what is the effect of all these policies in our communities, and making reports to the United Nations bodies, and also presenting and making a claim before the Inter-American system, which consists of the Inter-American Commission and Court. Very few people know this. In the US also, there is not a lot of knowledge on how the systems work, but the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has actually jurisdiction over the United States and can make a decision on violation of human rights. So that's why we have we are continuing making claims before the Inter-American Commission and before special procedures at the UN. And so far, we have had a public hearing, and it is available on the Commission's website. You can go and see how our communities actually were there and made their claims to the commissioners. And also, we were able to bring to Puerto Rico the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, Professor Alston. He came to Puerto Rico right after the hurricane, and he made a very specific declaration on the situation of Puerto Rico and our poverty rates, right? And how it is linked to our relationship to the United States. We are also in conversations with the UN Rapporteur on Foreign Debt and Human Rights, Professor Padro, and he has already asked the U.S. Department of State in more than 2 occasions that he wants to come to Puerto Rico to make an official visit and examine what's happening in Puerto Rico. And he also asked the Junta de Control Fiscal to give an answer on the fraudulent acts of selling bonds. And there are other international responsibility questions on the debt. And that's what our effort is focused on. But what the people of Puerto Rico is doing, I gotta say, we are very occupied. All of our organizations are working hard in Puerto Rico. Before the hurricane also, but after the hurricane, we have our communities are working on from day one in cleaning their own streets, in making sure that we get the supplies from the diaspora to those that most need it in Puerto Rico. There are people actually occupying abandoned buildings and schools and getting, there's a concerted effort that's called CAM, Centro de Apoyo Mutuo, and there are different groups from Centro de Apoyo Mutuo that are actually doing what needs to be done. I mean, we don't need a special reconstruction effort from the US. We need support to what the communities are already doing in their own municipalities, in their barrios. We have La Comunidad Coqui in Salinas. They have a great solar project. They want to separate themselves from the public electric system to make an energy sufficient, autonomous, environmentally friendly electric grid within their community. They already have the plans, they have everything. They just need the support and the money to do it. And also they need the support to counteract whatever act comes from the state right now to just undermine their projects or restrict what they are doing. Because this is another story, right? Our government don't want communities to have their own energy solar programs. So that is where support, I think, is needed from groups in the diaspora and friends in the US. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another question.
Good afternoon. I think besides Boricua's vote, it should be Boricua's run. In that way, we'll just have a lot of people in the Congress that are actually Puerto Rican. And the question is for the professor as to the lawsuit. Have the attorneys representing the class included the United States as a defendant, since ultimately it's the United States who is responsible to the Department of Education to provide special ed? And have they asked relief from the automatic stay to proceed with the lawsuit against the Department of Education in Puerto Rico?
Before going to the lawyer, that let me say this about people are I think people are very busy trying to take back their life. So sometimes to do that kind of strategic long-term projects are not necessarily what people are focusing in Puerto Rico, but that doesn't mean that there's other people in the movement that are doing boycotts, identifying those people, going to people to run and people to be elected. I think we need to, when we have this conversation, and we make sure that people understand that when you are seeking for the vote of Puerto Ricans in next community, that we expecting you to, if you're sitting in a committee that is supervising the control board in Puerto Rico, that you ask the questions about, are you giving this all these tax breaks in favor of what kind of thing? So when they said that they are gonna, cut vacation days, how many jobs that's gonna create? None, zero. So those kind of things needs to be presented to politicians that said that wants the Puerto Ricans to vote for them. So we need to upfront, bring the subject and make sure that they're voting the way that not only a congressperson, a mayor from a little city needs to make their voice heard. Because again, going back to the effort that we did in Florida and other places, to have a good relationship with the mayor, to have a good relationship with the council person, it helped you a lot to move a lot of things to help Puerto Rico. Make sure that we are getting the right information and that we are supporting the right organizations. Casa Pueblo is is a project that you're supporting. Casa Pueblo is a project that is well known, with good reputation. That's what we want to do. That doesn't mean that we need to create relationship with our churches and with our community groups that is going to help us to create a relationship between a community and the leaders of such community. And the good thing is that it's apart from the political parties of Puerto Rico that have been devastating the island for the last 50 years. Taking turns on how to screw people and how to sell, and when we went to Congress, people were like, oh, but we gave you the money, and how do you spend it? Well, you gave it to the wrong people. When you gave it to the wrong people, they're gonna use it in the wrong way. So let's make sure that we give the right organization the capacity of rebuilding Puerto Rico. Sorry if I took so.
The federal government is responsible for Puerto Rico's debt.
Yes.
That is just
Clear.
It should be clear. Yeah. Yes, on the class suit. Yes, we included the U.S. government in the class suit. However, this is a special education class suit, right? It is the government of Puerto Rico, the one that is responsible to apply the whole IDEA and the whole federal program that applies ties to Puerto Rico. So the suit is against the government of Puerto Rico primarily. And but under promesa, the point I was trying to make is that it's not only that class suit, but every single type of claim that anyone might have against the government is practically stalled. There's no reparations right now for any violations, civil rights violations even. So it's a really difficult situation for all of us, and even for human rights lawyers like me that would like to make, claims that should have, there is a right to reparations and to make structural changes when there are massive violations like those that are happening in Puerto Rico right now. There's a question there.
We have time for a question.
We're just about at time. Are there 2 questions left?
We have one.
Yeah. Can I pick one of you and then invite the other to ask our panelists a question right afterwards, just after we close? I don't want to let everybody take off. But then I know, Annette, that you had a comment or observation about the land trust issue also.
Yes.
Thank you. I just have a quick question in terms of entrepreneurship and leadership development, which I know, Juan, you're doing, on the entrepreneurship experience, and Jamie, I know you do some work on leadership development. I guess, understanding that right now the need is truly to rebuild, that is the need right now. So the efforts right now, that is what is needed to move forward. But, the next stage, what we see often is that people provide a lot of need and then there's no continuum of support long term. I'm wondering from the entrepreneurship side, is there any opportunities or partners or work that are wanting to stay engaged, and then as people are returning or as generations are coming to the ability to open businesses, what kind of support we're able to provide, even Boricuas Unidos, what does that support look like? And on the leadership development, kind of the same, through the crisis, but also recovery 10, 15, 20 years from now, how do we continue supporting and providing resources outside of the immediate need right now?
That's a great question. So I can tell you that I've been moving people from Puerto Rico up here to work with my company, and people, they're restaurateurs, okay, chefs, things like that, that lost their restaurants in the hurricane, and they're working for my group, and they're understanding, sort of how we do our business, and we're learning from them. And with the idea that in 12 to 18 months, they're going to go back to Puerto Rico and we're going to reinvest in them. And they're going to open up their businesses down there and create jobs down there. So that's really like on a very micro scale, some of the things that are happening in Denver. But I got to tell you, when I was up in the mountains and, there was no FEMA, there was no government, whether it be federal or local government, there were a bunch of 22 and 23-year-olds. So they were up there and they owned yoga studios and they owned acai bowl shops, and popsicles are big in Puerto Rico right now. And they were raising $300, $400, $500, and they were bringing canned foods, and they were bringing music, and they were impacting the community in a huge way. And we can talk policy all we want, but I'm telling you, at the end of the day, people need help. And your generation killed it. And that's entrepreneurism, for sure.
I think Maria gave us an opportunity of unite ourselves here and unite the island with the diaspora again. I said again because it happened before, and it's going to happen again. So I think we need to create our own heroes in different communities that are growing outside of the political parties in Puerto Rico and the government. That's a good opportunity, and I think people are seeing, that this guy in this community is really the real deal. In order to accomplish something in Arecibo, allá en Dominguito, so in Dominguito, you need to know so and so. It's like when people go to Orlando and I'm humble to say that people say, oh, you need to know Jimmy Torres. So that's the kind of thing that happened, and outside of the word, but then those new networks are gonna help us creating something new. With experience of the past, that we don't need to repeat what we have done before. So let's make sure that we don't make the same mistakes. Right now we're talking in Florida to create like little warehouses and places that the agriculture people from Puerto Rico can bring their goods to Orlando so it can be distributed. We make sure that people start, eating goods from Puerto Rico and not necessarily, we need to put our hands behind, push the car of the Puerto Rican economy. If we don't do that, there's nothing that we're doing really. So we need to do, step by step. But sometimes for a family, that little step means a lot. So let's try to do something. A day, a week, do something, do a call or I don't know, whatever. But let's try to continue. And I think Juan mentioned something yesterday, is that because Maria, we have accomplished that a lot of people don't even know about what Puerto Rico was before Maria. So now we have all these people coming to Puerto Rico, all these documentaries. So let's take this opportunity to move forward. And again, thank you for having us here.
One last note on that, you guys. Entrepreneurism is getting off your ass and going out and doing something. So, and I can tell you right now that whether it's here in Denver or Orlando or wherever you live or going to Puerto Rico, I spent 80 days there since the hurricane. I'm going back on Thursday. And you made the best point of the entire day when you said when you are out there and you're networking and you're doing things, you're creating relationships. Entrepreneurism is about relationships. It's about finding opportunity, to develop things that are going to have a positive impact. And if you're doing things for the right reason and you're developing solutions to good problems, I'm telling you right now, Puerto Rico has a lot of opportunity. I'm a firm believer in that. And I think that it's got agriculture, it's got solar, it's got wind. One thing that is stunning to me that the island is not known for is ecotourism. I think that's an absolutely huge area, and the land is not expensive in the hills. So you want to talk about like investing in land, you could do a land trust, or you can get 5 of your friends together and go buy 20 acres of land for 25 grand, right? So, and you can develop stuff, and you can develop, things that are important. And I think these coffee plantations up there that have a hard time getting laborers to pick coffee, that's something that you can work with those farmers, and you can bring people to the island at work. You can fill up their entire work schedule with people with ecotourism, picking coffee beans, So, and that's where the policy folks can come in and help change the laws on how coffee is dealt with in Puerto Rico. And, but it doesn't really export much, doesn't really grow much. 20% of what they eat in Puerto Rico only comes from the island, right? But they got to get that land. Other areas, Monsanto owns a lot of that land, so the soil's dirty, and they got to get it clean again. It's going to take a while, but it's a good time to start. I'll tell you that much.
One last comment.
Yes, I would advise against gathering a group of people and buying land in Puerto Rico, really. Right now we have a forced migration movement from Puerto Rico out to the United States. And yes, many of those that went out because they had no other options had no titles to their homes or their land. And because of our economic crisis, yes, prices are going down, but that only goes against our people's interest in Puerto Rico. If you are an entrepreneur, you can help entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico. We have Doña Rosa in the barrio that has been making a living by selling limben, and we have Pepe that has like this small store, grocery store in the barrio, but they don't have access to credit. So there are other ways in which we can help local people grow their own businesses in their communities. And we can also help groups in Puerto Rico that don't own land, not because they don't want it, but because they can't, because they don't have the money. Like, for example, Josco Bravo is a group of agricultural group of young people trying to make ecological agriculture work in Puerto Rico and trying to fight precisely the type of work that Monsanto is doing in Puerto Rico. So we have seen a lot of damage from people buying land and housing in Vieques, for example. And right now we have an increasing population of people that are from outside living in Vieques or owning second homes in Vieques, while the people from Vieques are unable to buy their own homes. They have to pay someone else. They live by renting their homes or space. So you see, when we get to discuss solutions, we really need to get into a discussion with the people in Puerto Rico and what will help them rebuild their own communities.
Voy a hacer el cierre en español, aunque español es mi segundo idioma, pero como respecto a Puerto Rico voy a hablar en español para este momento al final de la conferencia. Quiero agradecer a todos los panelistas, los moderadores, todos los participantes, ustedes que hicieron las preguntas. Quiero invitarles, especialmente a mis estudiantes hambrientos, a comer la comida que sobró aquí. Y también quiero recordarles de la invitación de Casa Pueblo, que está en las mesas. Casa Pueblo is raising funds, and there's a little flyer on each of the tables. I'll say that part in English just in case. And so that is one of those organizations que está en el pueblo, está en los barrios, está trabajando de base. Y simplemente quiero agradecer a todos ustedes por el interés, el compromiso con la isla, con Puerto Rico, con el pueblo de Puerto Rico, y pues que viva Puerto Rico. ¡Viva!